I know the topic today is gratitude, but what I want to talk to you about is actually the opposite of that. What happens when we forget to be grateful? What happens when we forget about gratitude? What happens when we start to take things for granted? To just forget to kind of take that moment and recognize and acknowledge things. And for me, as a berry researcher, what that really looks like is climate change. So, most of us, I think, here live in the Fraser Valley. We've been experiencing that firsthand. We've had atmospheric rivers, we've had heat domes, we've had unprecedented this, record that, and this is our new reality. So that might be what you think of in terms of an impact, but if I say, what is the picture that comes to your mind when you think about climate change? If I say, what is the poster? If you take a moment and think about it, what does that poster look like that is climate change? Does everyone have a picture in their minds? Does it look something like this? How many of you thought polar bear? Honest. Yeah. It's the sad polar bear on the melting ice cap. They have tears streaming down their face. Maybe it's the panda with the last straw of bamboo. But what I want you to think about is something a little bit different. I want to zoom in on the blurry background that no one thinks about. Our plants. So the cute and furries and the fluffies of the world, we love them. They tug at our heartstrings. They're charismatic. They're our sexy megafauna. Yeah. But you know what is sexier? Plants. So on the left here, we've got some Arctic cotton grass. That's what the blurry stuff is in the background that the photographer couldn't even figure out how to get into focus. We've got some beautiful medicinal plants. This is Labrador tea in the middle. And then, of course, my favorite are our berries. And so plants form the basis of our ecosystems. We don't have polar bears. We don't have us if we don't have plants. If you think about everything that you eat in a day, it all starts with plants. But being a plant is hard. So if you're a polar bear and you look around and you say, there's no seals here. The polar bear can get up, it can walk away, it can do a 60-mile swim. I don't know if that's true. I study plants, not polar bears. But it can go, it can change its environment, it can go find those seals, it can find a cooler location, it can find whatever resources it needs. If you're a plant, you are stuck there. You need to figure out how to adapt or you die. And so plants, I actually think, are much, much smarter than we are because they're very good at this, but they need help. So if we think about what the impacts of climate change are immediately, some of you might think of the Red List, so the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN Red List. That's who declares the international global species at risk list that you see. So I pulled from the Red List their most at-risk species from their kind of species statistics inventory. And if we have a look at this, if we look at the top 5, so red is bad, green is good. It feels self-explanatory. If we look at the most red ones and the most orange ones, almost all of them are plants. We've got our conifers and our trees, selected dicots, so our beautiful flowering plants, our berries, and some of our really cool plants like cycads. Things like birds, I feel like the birders are just everywhere. I apologize to all you birds in the audience. The birds are doing fine. We need to think about our plants. And so in my lab, we study how plants understand that environment and what they can do and how they make decisions so that they can adapt and not die, hopefully. And so my interest really is in understanding those signals. So plants can't talk, they can't speak, they can't scream at you, but what they can do is a lot of really awesome chemistry. And I know I've now said the word chemistry, but I won't say it anymore. My apologies to everyone in the room. But plants make all of the same hormones that we do. So hormones basically let us take any perception we have from the outside, translate it into a signal that we can use internally to change our function. Plants do the same thing. So plants have melatonin, plants have serotonin, plants have adrenaline. But in plants, they don't make you sleepy, happy, or stressed out like I might be right now. Instead, what they do is they tell plants, it's sunny right now, it's cold right now, this is really not a good situation right now. We should probably start, changing our sunscreen. So when plants turn red, it's because they're stressed. They're using it as sunscreen. They can change when they're flowering. They can change the shape of their leaves. If anyone's got house plants, you know how communicative they can be when they haven't been watered. And all of this is mediated by hormones. So in my research lab, we're doing a variety of different things to try and understand this. And one of them, I kind of joke, I love plants, and everyone's like, oh, you must have the most beautiful plants at home. And I have to admit to them that we mostly kill plants. Because if you want to understand what happens to them under stress, you have to expose them to stress. So this is an example of some of the work that we're doing in my lab. This is a mini stress chamber. It's a tiny greenhouse in a cranberry field. So if you haven't seen a cranberry field, this is what a cranberry field looks like. There's no water there. Water is only used when you actually do the cranberry harvest. The rest of the year, they grow in kind of sandy, peaty bogs. And we're working with the cranberry growers here in BC to understand what is going to happen to our cranberries as we move forward. So when you buy a bag of cranberries at the store, they say cranberries on them. But there's more than 100 different varieties of cranberries. So we want to understand, if we warm them up, if we expose them to what we're going to see in 2 years, we can make a computer model and say, is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Or we can look in the field. We can warm them up by those 2 degrees, and we can say, does it get better? Does it get worse? What happens? Whoops. Did I totally miss it? I think there's a slide that I missed. Terrible. What we see is actually that the number of berries that we get does reduce as we stress the plants out. And this is not surprising. This is something that traditional knowledge holders have been seeing for a while, especially in wild berries. If you go out and ask anyone who picks berries, you say, what's happening to your berry patch? And they say there's fewer berries, the berries are drier, the berries are smaller, they're not as sweet. And we see that same thing happening in our commercial cranberries as well. But the good news is, after more than 1 year, or if the environmental conditions change, the plants start to learn. And they can use these phytohormones to help them learn and adjust, and you start to see that they, in some cases, can bounce back. So the plants are very smart. One of the compounds that I want to talk about just briefly, because it's kind of like my baby, it's what I did my thesis on, and that's melatonin. That's one of those compounds that helps plants to adapt and to thrive. So you may not know this, and if there's a health researcher in the room, you can correct me, but the highest concentration of melatonin in our bodies is not actually in our brains. It's not there to just make us sleepy. We actually have very, very high concentrations in our reproductive systems, and that is to protect kind of our next generation. And plants do the exact same thing. Melatonin is actually a better antioxidant than vitamin C, for example, or any of those other kind of anthocyanin and superfood compounds you think about. And so plants have weaponized melatonin. This is their chemical warfare in plants. So this is a root tip. So this is the very, very end of a growing root. You can see that the end is glowing. We call that autofluorescence. That's just all of the metabolism that's happening in a rapidly growing region. But you can see a difference from the left and the right. And what is different here is we've taken individual molecules of serotonin and we've stuck a glowing tag on them. So if you have a quantum dot TV at home, is it, yes? Thank you. These are quantum dots. So we take the same type of quantum dots you have in your TV, we can stick them on a single molecule, and then we can follow where that single molecule goes in that plant. And so we can basically give ourselves supervision. And by understanding where something goes, we can understand what it does. And so what we see in melatonin is that when a plant's just kind of like hanging out and growing, and it's in kind of perfect conditions, just like at my house and my houseplants. Thank you. we see the melatonin is in like really focused places. It's in places where there's lots of active growth going on, and it's not really like in any major concentration. But if we stress the plant out, that is what's on the right. It lights up like a Christmas tree. And what the plants do is the plants say, I know what's going on. I've got this superpower thing that can detoxify any of these super damaging compounds. Oxygen, we need it to live, but it also is just a wrecking ball inside of cells. It just runs around and it breaks stuff. And so we need those antioxidants to go and clean it up, and that's what melatonin can do. So this is just one example of how smart plants can be, and one of the adaptive mechanisms they can have. And so what we really want to do is to understand from this, single molecule in the lab where all of us plant nerds are having lots of fun, how can we translate that out into understanding what is going on in our environment? Because I would like to think that we'll all pause and be grateful and appreciate our environment, and we can convince our governments to make those changes. But just in case we can't, it'd be really awesome to have a backup plan. So with that, I would like to say thank you to all of you. And I'll leave you with this beautiful picture of some salal berries, which are one of our native berries around here. Thank you.